My husband hit me in front of his mother, but her reaction shocked everyone in the room. We'd been married for 3 years when it happened. I was 26, he was 31, and I thought we were happy. Sure, Dean had a temper, but he'd never raised a hand to me. He'd punch walls, slam doors, break dishes, but never me. His mother, Patricia, lived 2 hours away and visited every few months. She was the kind of woman who wore pearls to brunch and corrected my grammar at dinner parties. Dean worshipped her. Whatever Patricia said was gospel. That Sunday, she arrived unannounced at noon. I was still in pajamas, dishes piled in the sink from the night before. The house was a mess because I'd worked a double shift at the hospital and collapsed into bed at 3 a.m. Patricia walked through the front door with her own key and surveyed the living room like a health inspector. "How do you live like this?" she said. Not a question, a statement. I started to explain about my shift, but Dean cut me off. "She's been lazy lately," he said. "I've been asking her to clean for days." That wasn't true. He hadn't asked me anything. I'd worked 62 hours that week while he played video games in the basement. I opened my mouth to defend myself when Patricia clicked her tongue. "My son deserves better than this." Something in Dean's face changed. He looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on your shirt. "You're embarrassing me," he said quietly. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because the absurdity of being judged by a woman who'd never worked a day in her life while I was pulling 16-hour shifts was too much. That's when his hand connected with my face. The slap echoed through the room. My cheek burned. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. My vision blurred. I stood there, frozen, waiting for Patricia to gasp or scream or do something. Instead, she smiled. "Finally," she said, "about time you learned to handle your wife properly." Dean looked at his mother, then back at me. Something shifted in his expression. Permission. Validation. He grabbed my arm and squeezed until I felt bone grinding. "My mother raised me right," he said. "Maybe she can teach you some respect too." Patricia set her purse down and took off her coat like she was settling in for a show. "Good wives don't talk back," she said calmly. "They don't laugh at their husbands. They certainly don't let the house fall apart." I tried to pull my arm free, but Dean's grip tightened. "My father had to correct my mother 3 times before she learned," Patricia continued. "By the 3rd time, she understood her place. It saved their marriage." Something clicked in my brain. All those stories Patricia had told about her perfect marriage, how her husband had been firm but fair, how she'd learned to be an excellent wife through discipline. She'd been beaten, and now she was passing it down like a family recipe. Dean pulled me toward the bedroom. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The handprint on my face was already turning purple. In the bedroom, he shoved me onto the bed. "My mother's going to teach you how to be a proper wife," he said. "Starting now." He left, locking the door from the outside. I heard them talking in the living room, Patricia's voice calm and instructive. "Start small. Never in public. Always have a reason." She was giving him a manual. I sat on the bed for maybe 30 seconds. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and opened it. We lived on the 2nd floor, but there was a drainage pipe right beside the window. I grabbed my phone and climbed out. The pipe held. I dropped the last 5 feet and my ankle twisted, but I kept moving. I ran to my neighbor's house. Margaret was 67 and took one look at me before pulling me inside. "Call the police," I said. Margaret gave me ice for my face and a blanket. She didn't ask questions. She just sat with me and held my hand with a grip that said, "I've seen this before." 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. Officer Chen and Officer Rodriguez. The woman took one look at my face and her jaw tightened. "Take your time," she said gently. "Tell us everything." I did. Every detail. The slap, Patricia's reaction, her proud smile, the coaching I could hear through the door about starting small and never doing it in public, Dean's grip on my arm that left finger-shaped bruises, how Patricia had said her father corrected her mother 3 times. Officer Rodriguez took photos of my face and my arm where the bruises were already turning dark purple. She photographed the blood on my pajamas, the swelling under my eye, the split lip, my twisted ankle. She took 47 photos total, each one from a different angle with a ruler for scale. Officer Chen went next door. Through Margaret's window, I watched him knock. Dean answered. Patricia standing behind him looking perfectly composed, hair still in place, pearls still gleaming. They both looked confused when the officer showed them the photos on his phone. I could see Dean's mouth moving, probably saying I was crazy, that it was an accident, that I'd overreacted, that I'd tripped and hit my face on something. Then the officer pointed to Margaret's house, at me standing in the window with ice pressed to my face. Patricia's face transformed. That practiced grace vanished. She looked feral. She tried to push past Officer Chen to get to me. I could see her screaming something through the window. The officer handcuffed Dean right there on the porch. When Patricia tried to stop them, physically pushing the officer and screaming about her rights and her son, she was arrested too. She fought. Actually fought. It took Officer Chen and 2 backup officers who'd arrived to get her in the car. At the station, I gave my statement. It took 2 hours. I told them about the walls Dean had punched. 12 different holes over 3 years. The door he'd kicked in last year when I'd asked him to help with dishes. The plate he'd smashed inches from my head when I'd come home late from work. The phone he'd thrown at the refrigerator, leaving a dent. How he'd grabbed my wrist so hard last month it left bruises I'd covered with long sleeves. All the warning signs I'd ignored because he'd never hit me. Because I thought punching walls meant he was controlling his anger. That he was choosing not to hurt me. I was so stupid. Officer Rodriguez stopped me. "You're not stupid," she said firmly. "You're a victim. There's a difference." She told me something that made my blood run cold. Patricia had a record from 30 years ago. Domestic assault against her first husband, Dean's father. She'd broken his nose, fractured 3 ribs, and given him a concussion with a cast iron skillet. It had been sealed when she remarried a wealthy lawyer who had connections, but it was there in the system. Dean had watched his mother beat his father for 6 years, then watched his father leave when Dean was 7, abandoning him with his abuser because he couldn't get custody as a man in 1995. His mother had taught him that controlling women was survival, that men who didn't discipline their wives were weak like his father, that his father had left because Dean wasn't worth staying for. She'd poisoned him from childhood. I filed for divorce the next day. My hand shook signing the papers, but I did it. The paralegal who helped me had bruises on her wrist she tried to hide with bracelets. I gave her my number before I left. Dean's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, a hysterical woman who'd overreacted to a minor disagreement. He claimed I'd attacked Dean first and he was defending himself, that I had a history of mental instability. He tried to subpoena my therapy records from after my dad died when I was 19, but I had the photos, the police report, Margaret's testimony about seeing me run from the house barefoot and bleeding, the hospital records from when I'd gone to the ER 6 months earlier claiming I'd fallen, but the doctor had noted the injuries were inconsistent with a fall, and I had the recording. Margaret had given me a voice-activated recorder after the police left. She'd slipped it into my hand and said, "Trust me on this. Some battles need evidence." She'd bought it after leaving her husband, had used it to document his threats. It had saved her life in court. I'd gone back to the house the next day with an officer escort to get my things. I'd left the recorder hidden in the living room behind a picture frame while Patricia and Dean talked, thinking they were alone. They'd discussed their story, how they'd say I'd attacked Dean first, how Patricia would testify that I'd always been unstable and jealous of their close relationship, how I'd been resentful that Dean loved his mother, how they'd make sure I never worked in healthcare again because who would trust a mentally unstable nurse with patients? Patricia had even laughed, said this was an opportunity to teach me a real lesson about respecting my husband, that maybe a few nights in a psychiatric hold would straighten me out, that she had a friend who was a psychiatrist who could write whatever diagnosis they needed. The recording destroyed their defense. The trial lasted 4 months. During that time, I moved in with my best friend Simone across town, changed my number, quit my job at the hospital where Dean knew my schedule and had friends in security who could tell him when I was working. Simone had to help me shower the first week because I couldn't stop shaking. I slept maybe 3 hours a night. Every sound made me jump. Every car that looked like Dean's made my heart race. Every knock on the door sent me into a panic. I lost 20 pounds in 6 weeks. The nightmares were the worst. I'd dream that Dean found me, that Patricia was in my room standing over my bed, that they'd locked me in the bedroom again, but this time there was no window. I'd wake up screaming. Simone would come running every time. She never complained, just sat with me until my breathing slowed, until I remembered where I was. Patricia tried to contact me twice. Once through my mother, showing up at her house with tears and a story about misunderstanding, how she was just trying to help save our marriage, how I was throwing away something precious, how Dean loved me so much and she'd never seen him so broken. My mother had opened the door, seen Patricia, and said, "If you ever come near my daughter again, I will kill you myself." Then she slammed the door and called the police. The second time was a letter that arrived at my old address, 5 pages. Patricia explained that I'd misunderstood, that Dean loved me, that strong marriages required discipline and I'd given up too easily, that her own marriage had been saved through her husband's firm guidance, that modern women didn't understand sacrifice, that wives who refused correction were destroying the family unit. She included Bible verses about wives submitting to their husbands, Ephesians 5:22, Colossians 3:18, 1 Peter 3:1, all highlighted in yellow. She also included photos of Dean looking devastated, of their empty house, of my wedding dress still hanging in the closet. She'd written on the back of that photo, "He kept this because he still believes you'll come back." I burned the letter without reading past the first page. Dean got 18 months in prison for assault and unlawful restraint. Patricia was charged with conspiracy to commit assault and witness tampering for trying to get me to drop the charges through my mother. She served 9 months in a minimum security facility where she taught Bible study and wrote letters to conservative politicians about family values. 9 months for teaching her son to beat his wife. When Dean was released, he violated the restraining order within 2 weeks. Showed up at my new apartment at midnight, pounding on the door and screaming that I'd ruined his life, that he'd lost his job, that his friends wouldn't talk to him, that everyone knew what I'd done to him, that I owed him another chance, that if I'd just listened to his mother and learned my place, we could be happy. My neighbor called the police before I even had to. The guy across the hall who was a bouncer named Marcus. He stood in front of my door until police arrived. Dean tried to fight him. Ended up with a broken nose and 2 black eyes on top of the restraining order violation. He went back to jail for another year. I spent that time rebuilding. I enrolled in a physician assistant program. Started therapy twice a week with a woman named Dr. Reeves who specialized in domestic violence. Learned that the signs had been there all along, but I'd ignored them because I'd loved the man I thought he was. Dr. Reeves asked me to list the red flags. I filled 3 pages. The way he'd isolated me from friends who questioned our relationship, my college roommate who'd said he seemed controlling, my cousin who'd said he had angry eyes, the way he needed to know where I was at all times, the way he'd check my phone while I slept, the way he'd sulk for days if I made plans without asking him first, the way he'd punch walls right next to my head, close enough I could feel the air move, the way he'd blame me for his anger, the way he'd apologize the next day with flowers and say I made him crazy because he loved me so much. How had I not seen it? because I'd wanted so badly to believe that love could overcome anything, that if I was just patient enough, understanding enough, perfect enough, he'd be the man I'd fallen for again, the man who'd brought me coffee in bed and called me beautiful. That man had existed for maybe 6 months. My therapist taught me that love doesn't require you to endure abuse, that real love protects, that I hadn't failed at my marriage. My marriage had failed me from the beginning, that Dean had love-bombed me, then slowly isolated and controlled me, that it was textbook. Patricia started a blog called Restoring Traditional Families. She wrote about how the justice system persecutes traditional families and godly men who try to lead their households. She got a small following of women who believed wives needed firm guidance. Her posts detailed how ungrateful modern women had destroyed her relationship with her son. She posted about me by name, called me a homewrecker who'd seduced her innocent son, then cried victim when he tried to save their marriage, posted my photo from Facebook, my workplace, my address, encouraged her followers to let everyone know what kind of person I really was, said I was a Jezebel who'd corrupted her son. Someone sent me the link. I read 3 posts before closing the browser and calling my lawyer. The harassment started immediately. Women from her blog calling the hospital to complain about me, saying I was dangerous, unstable, that I'd lied about a good man to avoid taking responsibility for being a bad wife. Men calling and leaving voicemails describing what they'd do to me, what I deserved. One man left 14 messages in 2 hours. The post disappeared within 48 hours after my lawyer threatened a defamation lawsuit. But the damage was done. The hospital had to hire security for the ER entrance. I changed my name, not legally but professionally. Started going by my middle name at work, wore my hair different, started parking in different spots, changed my routine completely. Last year, I finished my PA program at the top of my class. My thesis was on identifying domestic violence in emergency settings. I got hired at a trauma center on the other side of the city. On my first day, a woman came in with a broken wrist and bruises around her throat in the pattern of fingers. Clear as day. Her husband said she'd fallen down the stairs. She nodded along. She was 24. Same age I'd been when I married Dean. I recognized the look in her eyes. The careful way she avoided contradicting him. The way she flinched when he raised his hand to gesture. The way she said it was her fault for being clumsy. The way she apologized for wasting everyone's time. The way she said she was fine, really. Just stupid and uncoordinated. I asked the husband to wait outside while I examined her. Hospital policy, I said. He didn't want to leave. Said he needed to be there for his wife. The charge nurse backed me up. Said it was required for privacy. Once he left, I locked the door and sat beside her bed. You don't have to protect him, I said quietly. She started crying. Said she had nowhere to go. No money in her own name. No family who'd believe her because he was so charming to everyone else. 2 kids at home who needed their father. She was 6 months pregnant with the 3rd. A boy. He wanted a boy so badly. I gave her my phone number. The address of the shelter where I'd volunteered after leaving Dean, a list of lawyers who did pro bono work, the name of Dr. Reeves who specialized in domestic violence, information about emergency housing, a pamphlet about creating a safety plan. Don't call me from your phone, I said. He probably checks it. Use the hospital phone or a friend's phone or go to the library, delete the browser history. She took the papers with shaking hands, said she'd think about it. I knew that meant she wasn't ready. 2 weeks later, she called from a blocked number. She'd left. Taken the kids in the middle of the night while he was passed out drunk. She was scared but safe. The shelter had taken them in immediately. Her name was Rebecca. She became the first success story that made me realize I could do more. That's when I started the program. I partnered with the trauma center to create a dedicated pathway for abuse victims. We trained all staff to recognize signs, created private rooms for examinations away from partners, developed a code system where patients could signal they needed help without alerting their abuser. If they asked for a specific pain medication by name that wasn't typically used, we knew. Connected patients directly with resources. Had social workers and advocates on call 24/7. We created a fund for emergency housing. Got local hotels to donate rooms for women fleeing with kids. Partnered with lawyers for immediate restraining orders. Set up a safe phone line that couldn't be traced. Created a network of volunteers who could provide transportation in the middle of the night. We trained doctors and nurses on what questions to ask. How to document injuries. How to talk to patients alone. How to recognize the patterns. I developed a checklist based on my own experience and research. 20 questions that could identify abuse with 94% accuracy. Within 6 months, we'd helped 17 women leave dangerous situations. By the end of the year, 43. The next year, 89. Last year, 127. This year, we're on track for 200. Rebecca came back to volunteer. She brought her kids. They were thriving. She'd gotten a job as a dental hygienist. Started dating someone who treated her well. Her kids were in therapy and doing better in school. Her son had stopped having nightmares. She told me I'd saved her life. I told her she'd saved her own life. I just gave her the tools. Patricia's blog posted about me again after a local news segment featured the program. Called me a home wrecker and a marriage destroyer. Said I was poisoning women against their devoted husbands because I'd failed at my own marriage. Posted my photo again with my new workplace. She told her followers that someone needed to stop me before I destroyed more families. That I was doing the devil's work. That I was part of a feminist conspiracy to destroy traditional values. That I was training women to be disobedient and rebellious. For 3 days, I received death threats. Women who said I deserved what Dean had given me and worse. Men who said they'd finish what Dean started. Detailed descriptions of what they'd do to me, where they'd find me, how they'd make me pay. One email described exactly how he'd break every bone in my body, The hospital increased security, metal detectors at every entrance. Police monitored the threats. I had a patrol car follow me home for 2 weeks. I slept with a baseball bat next to my bed and pepper spray on my nightstand. I stopped going to the grocery store alone. Marcus started walking me to my car after night shifts. Then something unexpected happened. A woman who'd been following Patricia's blog called the hospital. She wanted to speak with me privately. She said her name was Lauren and she had information I needed to hear. That Patricia had ruined her life too. That she'd been too scared to come forward before, but seeing me on the news gave her courage. We met at a coffee shop across town. I brought Simone with me just in case. Lauren was 34 with scared eyes and a confidence that seemed newly acquired. Like she was still learning to take up space. She had a scar across her eyebrow that makeup couldn't quite hide. She'd been married to Patricia's second husband's nephew for 8 years. Patricia had convinced him that Lauren needed correction. She'd sent him articles about traditional marriage, books about biblical submission and wifely obedience, videos about how modern women had forgotten their place and needed to be reminded through discipline. He'd put Lauren in the hospital twice. Broken ribs the first time, concussion and fractured jaw the second time. The third time, she'd lost a baby at 14 weeks from internal injuries. The doctors had told her she might not be able to have children again. Lauren had evidence. Years of emails from Patricia coaching her husband on how to discipline his wife properly. Photos Patricia had taken of Lauren's bruises with captions like, effective teaching moment and finally learning respect. And this is what real love looks like. Text messages discussing technique, which areas bruise less visibly, how to explain injuries to doctors and family, what to say to CPS if they got involved, how to make sure she understood it was for her own good. Patricia had been documenting everything like a case study, like she was writing a manual for others to follow. Lauren showed me her phone, hundreds of messages, photos that made me sick, instructions on when correction was appropriate, how often was too often, how to make sure she was truly repentant, how to know when she'd learned her lesson. One email detailed the difference between correction and abuse. Patricia had written that correction was done out of love to teach, that it should be controlled and purposeful, that the wife should understand why she was being corrected, that she should thank her husband afterward for caring enough to guide her. We went to the police together the next day. Patricia was arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit domestic violence. Multiple counts across multiple families spanning 15 years. The investigation uncovered 5 other women Patricia had coached men to abuse. Then they found more, 8 women total, then 12. The network kept growing. She'd been running an underground operation for decades, teaching men that violence was godly discipline. She called it Covenant Correction, a ministry for restoring proper order in Christian homes. She had a whole system, online groups with encrypted messaging on platforms that promised privacy, in-person meetings disguised as Bible studies in church basements where no one asked questions. A handbook she'd written called Restoring Order in the Home. Chapter titles included When Words Aren't Enough and Making Her Understand Her Place and the Rod of Correction and Breaking the Spirit of Rebellion. The handbook had been distributed to 47 men across 6 states. The FBI got involved. They found the network was bigger than anyone thought. Men in 9 states, some in Canada, 1 in Australia. They found everything. Women who'd been hospitalized, women who'd lost pregnancies, women who'd developed PTSD so severe they couldn't function, 2 women who'd attempted suicide, 1 woman who'd succeeded. Her husband had been in Patricia's program for 3 years. Her name was Michelle. She was 29. She left behind 2 daughters ages 4 and 6. Her suicide note said she couldn't take it anymore, that she'd tried to leave but he always found her, that she was sorry but she couldn't keep living like this. Her husband had shown the note to Patricia. Patricia had told him Michelle had been too weak, that he needed to find a stronger wife next time, that some women simply couldn't be saved. The investigation found that Patricia had been abused herself as a child. Her father had beaten her mother regularly, had beaten Patricia too when she intervened. Her mother had eventually killed herself when Patricia was 16. Instead of breaking the cycle, Patricia had embraced it, had decided that her mother had been weak, that discipline was love, that pain was teaching. She'd spent 40 years spreading that poison. She's serving 12 years now in a federal prison. Her appeals keep getting denied because the evidence is overwhelming. Hundreds of emails, thousands of text messages. The handbook with her handwritten notes in the margins. Testimony from 8 women. Medical records. Police reports going back years that had never been connected until now. Dean moved back into her house when she was arrested, living alone in her empty mansion. Last I heard, he works at a hardware store making $14 an hour. Lost his job in finance after his conviction. His dating profile says he's looking for a traditional woman who understands biblical submission and doesn't work outside the home, who knows her place, who wants to build a traditional family. He's 34 now and looks 50 in his photos. Gray hair, lines around his eyes, the kind of weathering that comes from bitterness. Sometimes I wonder if he understands what his mother did to him, if he recognizes that her love was poison, if he knows that watching her beat his father shaped him into someone who thought hurting me was normal, if he ever thinks about me and feels anything at all. Probably not. People like him never do. They're always the victim in their own story. I'm engaged now. To someone I met through the domestic violence program. His name is Ben, and he's a therapist who volunteers at the shelter 3 nights a week. He's never raised his voice at me, never checked my phone, never asked where I'm going or who I'm with, never made me feel small. He encourages my career and my late nights at the hospital. He brings me dinner when I work doubles. He thinks my independence makes me stronger, not difficult. The first time I flinched when he raised his hand to adjust his glasses, he cried. Actually cried. Said he was sorry that someone had made me afraid, that he'd never hurt me, that he'd spend the rest of his life proving it. When I told him about Dean and Patricia, he held me while I cried. Not for himself, but for what I'd survived. All the tears I'd held back for years came out. Hours of crying. He just held me and said, "You're safe now," over and over until I believed. We're getting married next spring. Small ceremony at a garden I love. Just close friends and family who actually love us. No one who thinks submission means tolerating abuse. Dr. Reeves is coming. Simone is my maid of honor. Lauren is invited. Rebecca and her kids are coming. Margaret will be there. My mother asked if I was scared, if I worried history would repeat. I told her the truth. I'm not scared anymore, because I know what love isn't. I know what it looks like when someone tries to break you down instead of build you up. I know the warning signs by heart now. I know my worth. I know that leaving isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. It's survival. And I'll never accept less than what I deserve again. The program at the hospital has expanded to 3 other trauma centers across the state. We've helped over 200 women in 2 years. Some of them send me cards on holidays. Some of them volunteer now, helping other women escape. Some of them have become advocates and social workers themselves. One went to law school to specialize in domestic violence cases. Another started a nonprofit for housing abuse survivors. One of them brought her daughter to meet me last month. The daughter had been 4 when they left. She's 6 now and wants to be a doctor. She drew me a picture of a woman with a cape. A superhero, she said. That's you. I hung it in my office next to my PA certification and a photo of me ringing the bell on my last day of treatment. Not cancer, PTSD treatment. Dr. Reeves had a bell in her office for when patients completed therapy, because sometimes surviving isn't enough. Sometimes you have to take what tried to destroy you and turn it into something that saves others. Patricia's network is gone. The men she coached are being investigated. Some are in prison. Others are in mandated therapy. Others lost custody of their kids. The women she hurt are healing. Some are still fighting for custody. Some are rebuilding their lives one day at a time. Some are thriving. Lauren got remarried last year to a man who treats her like gold. They're trying for a baby. The doctor said it's possible despite the damage. And I'm standing at the altar next spring with a man who knows my whole story and loves me not despite it, but including it. Who sees my scars and calls me brave instead of damaged. Who knows I wake up with nightmares sometimes and just holds me until I remember I'm safe. Dean will probably see the wedding announcement in the local paper. I hope he does. I hope he sees that I didn't just survive. I thrived. I hope somewhere in whatever's left of his conscience, he understands that the day he hit me was the day he lost everything, and the day I became unstoppable. Because that slap didn't break me. It woke me up. And now I spend every day making sure other women wake up too. Before it's too late. Before they lose years of their lives to someone who learned that love looks like violence. Patricia taught Dean that hurting me was love. I'm teaching women that real love never hurts. And I'm winning. Last week, a woman came into the ER with her daughter. The daughter was the one injured. Broken arm from falling off her bike. But while I was setting the bone, the mom kept pulling down her sleeves. I noticed bruising on her wrist when she reached for her daughter's hand. After I finished with the daughter, I asked the mom to step outside for some paperwork. Once we were alone, I showed her my card. "You don't have to live like that," I said quietly. She started crying. Said she thought she was hiding it well. That she didn't want her daughter to know. That she was saving money to leave, but it was taking so long. That every time she got close to having enough, something would happen and she'd have to start over. "I have a fund," I told her, "for women exactly like you." She left 2 days later. Took her daughter to her sister's house 3 states away. Her husband showed up at the hospital looking for her. Security escorted him out. He was arrested for trespassing and violating the hospital's visitor policy. That's what I do now. I save women. The way no one saved me until I saved myself. Ben says I have a calling. That not everyone who survives trauma turns it into purpose. But I think everyone has that choice. To let it destroy you or define you. I chose definition. Next month, I'm speaking at a conference about domestic violence in healthcare settings, presenting our program model so other hospitals can replicate it. The keynote speaker is a senator who's proposing legislation for mandatory DV screening in emergency rooms, funding for programs like ours in every major hospital. Patricia will be in prison when it passes. She'll know that everything she built is gone, that everything she taught is being undone, that the women she tried to break are the ones writing the new rules. That's the justice I needed. Not just her behind bars, but her legacy destroyed. Dean requested to be my friend on social media last month. I blocked him immediately. Some doors need to stay closed. I'm not interested in his redemption arc. Not interested in whether he's changed or gotten therapy or found God or whatever story he's telling himself. I'm interested in making sure no other woman ends up with a man like him, with a mother-in-law like Patricia, in a marriage that's actually a prison. That's enough for me. That's everything. The night before Dean hit me, we'd been watching a movie, some romantic comedy. There was a scene where the couple fought and then made up with flowers and apologies. Dean had said that's not realistic. Real relationships require discipline. I'd laughed. Thought he was joking. He wasn't. Looking back, there were so many moments like that. Statements I dismissed as jokes or figures of speech. Comments about women needing strong men. About wives who didn't know their place. About his mother being right about everything. About how his father had been weak for leaving. Red flags I'd painted green in my mind. Dr. Reeves says that's normal. That abusers condition you slowly. That they test boundaries gradually. That by the time you realize what's happening, you're already trapped. That the brain adapts to survive, and sometimes that means normalizing the abnormal. I teach that now in my trainings. How to spot the conditioning, the isolation, the gaslighting, the escalation, the love bombing followed by devaluation, the cycle of abuse that keeps victims trapped. Last month, a nurse pulled me aside after a training, said she'd realized her boyfriend was doing exactly what I'd described, that she'd thought she was being dramatic, that everyone fights, that relationships are hard work, that he was just passionate. She left him 2 weeks later, said the training saved her life, that she could see where it was heading now, that she wasn't going to wait around to become another statistic. That's what keeps me going, knowing that every woman I help is one less woman who'll end up bleeding in a neighbor's kitchen, one less woman who'll lose years to someone who thinks love and violence are the same thing, one less woman who'll have to climb out a second-story window to escape. Ben proposed to me 6 months ago. We were at the shelter where he volunteers. He'd just finished a therapy session with a woman who'd left her husband after 20 years. She was crying happy tears, saying she'd finally done it, that she was free. That night, Ben took me to the roof of the shelter building. The city lights spread out below us. He got down on one knee and said, "I want to spend my life helping you save women. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question. The ring is simple. No diamond, just a silver band with an inscription inside. You are unstoppable. Sometimes I look at it and remember the woman I was 3 years ago. The one who thought love meant tolerating anger, who thought staying meant strength, who thought leaving meant failure. That woman is gone. In her place is someone who knows her worth, who doesn't flinch anymore when someone raises their voice, who sleeps through the night without nightmares most nights, who trusts that the person beside her won't hurt her. It took 2 years of therapy to get here, 2 years of waking up with panic attacks, 2 years of learning that healing isn't linear, that some days I'd feel strong and some days I'd feel broken and both were okay. Dr. Reeves taught me that trauma lives in your body, that you can't think your way out of it, that you have to feel it to heal it, that the body keeps the score and remembers even when the mind tries to forget. So I felt everything, the anger, the grief, the shame, the fear, all of it, wave after wave until the waves got smaller and further apart. And on the other side was peace. Margaret came to visit me last week, brought me cookies, said she was proud of me, that watching me turn my pain into purpose had inspired her to volunteer at the shelter too. She's 68 now and helps with childcare while the mothers attend therapy sessions and job training. The kids love her. They call her Grandma Margaret. She told me something I didn't know. Her daughter had been in an abusive marriage. Margaret hadn't known how to help, hadn't recognized the signs until it was too late. Her daughter had died in a car accident 15 years ago, but Margaret always suspected it wasn't an accident, that her son-in-law had tampered with the brakes. They'd never been able to prove it. That's why she'd helped me that day. Why she'd had the recorder ready. Why she'd known exactly what to do. She was saving me the way she couldn't save her daughter. We cried together in my office. 2 women connected by trauma and survival, and the determination to make sure no one else suffers the way we did, the way her daughter did. That's what this work does. It connects you to other survivors, creates a network of women who understand, who don't need you to explain, who believe you without question. I have 12 women now who I call my survivor sisters. We meet once a month for dinner. We laugh. We cry. We celebrate victories and mourn setbacks. Lauren is one of them. Rebecca is another. Margaret comes sometimes. The paralegal from the law office, the nurse from my training, a woman who escaped after 30 years of marriage, a 19-year-old who got out after 6 months. We're all at different stages of healing. Some of us are thriving, some of us are still struggling, all of us are fighting, and we're winning. Because for every Patricia teaching men to abuse, there are dozens of us teaching women to escape, to heal, to thrive. The numbers are on our side. Last week, the program helped woman number 250. Her name is Jasmine. She's 22 with a 2-month-old baby. Her husband had started hitting her while she was pregnant. She thought it would stop after the baby came. It got worse. She came in with a concussion and cigarette burns on her arms. Said she'd fallen while smoking. The baby was unharmed but terrified. Wouldn't stop crying. I gave Jasmine the same resources I'd given everyone else. Told her she deserved better. That her baby deserved better. That her child would grow up thinking this was normal if she stayed. She left the next day. Took the baby to her grandmother's house across the state. Filed charges. Got a restraining order. Started therapy. She called me yesterday. Said she was safe. That her husband had been arrested. That she was starting to believe she could do this. That she was going back to school. I told her she already was doing it. That leaving was the hardest part, and she'd done it. That everything else would be hard too, but she was strong enough. She cried. Said thank you wasn't enough. I said living well is thanks enough. Showing your baby what real love looks like. Breaking the cycle. That's all any of us can do. Patricia broke Dean. Dean tried to break me. But I'm not broken. I'm whole. I'm healed. I'm happy. And I'm making damn sure the cycle ends with me. That's my legacy. Not the marriage that failed. Not the man who hit me. Not the mother-in-law who taught him to. My legacy is the 250 women who are free because I refuse to stay broken. My legacy is the legislation that's going to pass because I turned my story into advocacy. My legacy is every person who hears my story and realizes they don't have to live like that. Patricia wanted to destroy me. She wanted to teach me my place. She wanted to break my spirit. Instead, she gave me purpose. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure she regrets it. Because that slap didn't break me. It woke me up. It showed me exactly who I was married to, who his mother was, what my future would have been if I'd stayed. 5 years from now, I'll be standing at that altar. The program will have helped thousands. The legislation will have passed. Patricia will still be in prison. Retry J continue edit continuation of part 2. The full story. 5 years from now, I'll be standing at that altar. The program will have helped thousands. The legislation will have passed. Patricia will still be in prison. And Dean will be exactly where he is now. Alone. Bitter. Wondering where it all went wrong. The conference next month has 400 registered attendees. Hospital administrators, social workers, nurses, doctors, people who want to replicate what we've built, people who see the need in their own communities. I've been asked to keynote, to tell my story, to explain how we built the program from nothing. I'm terrified. Dr. Reeves says that's normal, that public speaking about trauma is re-traumatizing, that I need to be careful not to burn out, that helping others can't come at the cost of my own healing. But I have to do this. Because for every person in that room who hears my story, there will be hundreds of women who benefit. Thousands, maybe. That's bigger than my fear. Ben is coming with me. He's presenting too. About the therapeutic approaches that work best for domestic violence survivors. About how traditional therapy often fails because it doesn't account for the complex trauma of abuse. We're a team now. In work and in life. Sometimes I think about the sliding doors moment. What if Margaret hadn't been home that day? What if I'd stayed in that bedroom? What if I'd believed Dean when he came back later and apologized? Because he did apologize. Through his lawyer. Said he'd been under stress. That his mother had pressured him. That he'd never do it again. Classic abuser playbook. I wonder how many women believe those apologies. How many go back? How many end up dead? The statistics are grim. A woman is most likely to be killed when she leaves. That's when abusers lose control and panic. That's why our program includes safety planning. Why we have safe houses with hidden locations. Why we have lawyers who can get emergency restraining orders in hours instead of days. Because the window between deciding to leave and actually getting out safely is when women are most vulnerable. Rebecca almost didn't make it. Her husband tracked her phone, found her at her mother's house, broke down the door with a baseball bat. Her mother called 911. He was arrested before he could get to Rebecca and the kids. But it was close. Too close. Now we teach women to leave their phones behind, to use burner phones, to assume they're being tracked. Technology has made escape harder. GPS in cars, location sharing on phones, security cameras, smart home devices that abusers can access remotely. We've had to get creative. We partner with tech companies who help women disable tracking. We have volunteers who can sweep for hidden cameras and recording devices. We teach women how to recognize surveillance. It's exhausting, but necessary. Last month, we found 7 hidden cameras in one woman's house, in the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen. Her husband had been watching her for months, knew every move she made. She'd thought she was going crazy, thought she was paranoid. He'd convinced her she was imagining things, classic gaslighting. When we showed her the cameras, she broke down. Relief and horror mixed together. Relief that she wasn't crazy, horror at what he'd been doing. She's safe now. He's in jail. But the trauma of knowing he'd watched her for months will take years to heal. That's what people don't understand about domestic violence. The physical wounds heal. The psychological ones last forever. I still jump when someone raises their voice. Still feel my heart race when I see a car that looks like Dean's. Still have nightmares sometimes where I'm back in that bedroom and there's no window. Dr. Reeves says that's PTSD, that it's normal, that it might never fully go away, that I've learned to manage it, but the triggers will always be there. Some days that makes me angry, that Dean gets to live his life while I'm stuck with the aftermath of what he did. But then I remember the 250 women, the thousands more will help, the legislation that will change how hospitals handle domestic violence. That's revenge enough. Patricia's sentencing hearing was packed. Women she'd hurt, men she'd coached, families she'd destroyed. The judge listened to hours of testimony. One woman stood up and said Patricia had coached her husband to break her fingers one by one, as punishment for leaving the house without permission. Another woman said Patricia had told her husband it was appropriate to withhold food, that fasting taught discipline. Another said Patricia had coached her husband on how to hurt her without leaving visible bruises, how to choke her just enough to scare her, but not enough to kill her. The judge's face was stone. When everyone finished, she looked at Patricia and said, "I've been a judge for 27 years. I've never seen anything like this. You didn't just abuse these women. You weaponized other people to do it for you." Patricia tried to speak, said she was helping families, that modern women needed guidance, that she'd been misunderstood. The judge cut her off. "You're not misunderstood. You're dangerous. And you'll spend the next 12 years thinking about the lives you've destroyed." I watched Patricia's face as they led her away. She looked at me. For just a second, our eyes met. She smiled. Not a sad smile. Not a defeated smile. A satisfied smile. Like she'd accomplished something. That's when I understood. Patricia didn't regret anything. She believed she was right. That she was helping. That we were all ungrateful women who didn't understand what she was trying to teach us. She'll die believing that. Some people can't be saved, can't be reached, can't be changed. That's a hard lesson, but an important one. I used to think if I could just explain to Dean what he'd done, if I could make him understand, then he'd apologize, change, become the man I thought I'd married. But that man never existed. I'd fallen in love with a mask. The real Dean was the one who hit me, who locked me in a room, who plotted with his mother to have me committed. That's who he is. And Patricia is who she is. A woman so broken by her own trauma that she spent decades breaking other women. I feel sorry for her sometimes, for the girl she was, the one who watched her father beat her mother, who was beaten herself, who never got help, who turned her pain into poison. But I can't save her. No one can. All I can do is make sure she doesn't hurt anyone else. The wedding is in 4 months. We've been planning for a year. Nothing fancy, just a garden ceremony with 50 people. My mother is walking me down the aisle. She cried when I asked her, said she was sorry she hadn't seen what was happening with Dean, that she'd thought I was happy. I told her it wasn't her fault, that abusers are good at hiding, that I'd hidden it too, that I'd lied to her about the bruises, about the holes in the walls, about how I was really doing. She said she should have known anyway. That's what mothers are supposed to do. But abuse doesn't work like that. It's not obvious. It's subtle. It builds slowly. By the time anyone notices, the victim is already trapped. Dr. Reeves says family and friends often miss the signs because abusers are charismatic, charming. They save the violence for private moments. They present one face to the world and another to their victims. Dean was like that. Everyone loved him. His coworkers thought he was great. His friends thought he was a good guy. Even my own friends thought I was lucky to have him. Only I knew the truth. Well, me and Patricia. The program has a family education component now. We teach parents and friends how to recognize signs, how to help without pushing their loved one away, how to be there when they're ready to leave, because pushing doesn't work. You can't force someone to leave an abusive relationship. They have to be ready. They have to see it for themselves. All you can do is be ready when they are, have resources available, keep the door open. Margaret taught me that. She said her daughter had tried to leave 3 times before the accident. Each time, Margaret had pushed too hard, said the wrong things, driven her daughter away. By the time her daughter was ready to leave for good, she'd stopped asking for help, stopped trusting anyone, and then it was too late. That's why our program trains families too, teaches them patience, how to listen, how to believe, how to help without judgment. It's working. We've had several women leave because their families went through the training, learned how to help effectively. One woman said her sister had been through our training. When she finally told her sister what was happening, her sister didn't ask why she'd stayed, didn't judge, just said, "What do you need and I'll help you get it." That's all it takes sometimes. Belief, support, resources. The woman is safe now. Her kids are in therapy. She's going back to school. Her sister still checks in every day. That's what family should do. My mother checks in with me every day now. Just a text. Thinking of you. Love you. How are you doing? Some days I need it. Some days I don't. But it's there. Consistent. Reliable. That's what I needed when I was married to Dean. Someone checking in. Someone who would have noticed if I disappeared. But I'd isolated myself. Or Dean had isolated me. Same thing, really. Now I have a network. People who know where I am. Who'd notice if I didn't show up. Who'd come looking. Safety in numbers. Ben and I have passwords. Code words. If one of us is in trouble, we have a signal. A word that means call the police without letting the other person know. It sounds paranoid. But Dean's still out there. Patricia has followers who think she's a martyr. There are men from her network who haven't been caught yet. Better paranoid than dead. The program teaches that too. Safety planning isn't weakness. It's survival. We had a woman last month whose ex found her. He'd been stalking her for 6 months. Showed up at her new job, her new apartment, her daughter's school. The restraining order did nothing. He violated it repeatedly. Spent a night in jail each time. Got out and did it again. We moved her into a safe house with a hidden location. Got her a new job through our employment program. Enrolled her daughter in a different school under a different name. He couldn't find her. Still can't. She's been safe for 3 months now. Starting to breathe again. Starting to believe she might actually be free. That's what we do. We give women their lives back. Dean tried to take mine. Patricia tried to take mine. They failed. And because they failed, 250 other women got theirs back too. That's the math that matters. Next week, I'm meeting with the senator about the legislation. She wants my input on the mandatory screening protocols. What questions to ask, how to train staff, how to fund the programs. I've prepared a presentation, research, data, success stories, cost-benefit analysis, because that's what it takes to change systems. Not just passion, not just stories, but proof, numbers, evidence that it works. Our program has a 73% success rate, meaning 73% of women who go through our program successfully leave and don't return to their abusers. That's significantly higher than the national average of 43%. The difference? Resources, support, safety planning, follow-up care. It's not rocket science. It's just actually helping instead of judging. The senator seems genuinely committed. She's been through it herself. Her mother was killed by her father when she was 12. She gets it. Not just intellectually, but viscerally. That's what we need. People in power who understand, who won't cut funding when budgets get tight, who see this as essential healthcare. Because it is. Domestic violence costs the economy billions every year. Medical costs. Lost productivity, criminal justice expenses, child welfare costs. Preventing it is cheaper than dealing with the aftermath. But more than that, it's the right thing to do. Women shouldn't have to choose between homelessness and violence, between poverty and abuse, between staying alive and staying safe. They should have options, resources, support. That's what we're building. Option by option, woman by woman, life by life. Patricia wanted to build a world where women knew their place, where discipline was love, where submission was virtue. I'm building the opposite. A world where women are free, where love is safe, where strength is celebrated. We're both building legacies, but only one of us is on the right side of history. In 50 years, Patricia will be a footnote, a cautionary tale, an example of how trauma, left untreated, becomes poison. The program will still be running. The legislation will still be saving lives. The women we've helped will have helped others. That's immortality, not being remembered, but creating something that outlives you, something that matters. That's what I'm building with every woman I help, every training I give, every policy I shape. A world where what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. That's ambitious, maybe impossible, but worth fighting for. Ben says I'm changing the world one woman at a time. I say I'm just doing what should have been done for me. Either way, the work continues. Tomorrow, I have 3 patient appointments, a training session for new staff, a meeting with a donor who wants to fund expansion, and dinner with Lauren to celebrate her pregnancy. After everything Patricia's husband did to her, the doctor said she was pregnant. A miracle, they called it. Lauren just calls it hope. That's what we give women. Hope. That things can be different. That they can be safe. That they can have lives worth living. Patricia gave women fear, control, violence disguised as love. I give them freedom. And in the end, freedom wins. Every single time.